Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, The Mighty Indexers, and today we're doing a different style video. We're doing a reaction video. There's a video I stumbled upon, and it's called I Needed 147 Adobe stock videos to realize this. The creator of this video is basically going through different other finance YouTubers videos, watching it about Adobe stock to come up with his own conclusion. Now, if you guys have seen my channel, I've already told you my opinion on Adobe stock versus the index funds. Now, I did stumble across a comment under this video by a Mr. at Invest Amplify, and he's saying that basically this company is 20% of his portfolio. He's a PhD student with 10 plus years of professional and academic experience using the designing software, I would assume. And he's saying he believes in the growth of this company, yada yada yada. They have a freemium model that is, he's coming up with all these excuses as to why the company is down, and that he has conviction in it. If you have 1/5 of your portfolio in something, you usually are more biased towards that company and you have more conviction, or you would have not got a 20% position in Adobe. Now, unfortunately for this guy, he's probably holding the bag, and he needs to defend his investment, which I understand that, but I'm trying to help people. So I left a comment down below. Basically, it links the YouTube video for my channel, and I said Adobe is a waste of time. You are losing money. And that's the thing, guys. A lot of these individual stock pickers, nobody's giving it to them straight. You have all these different channels, different kinds of investing YouTubers, and they're not pushing the index because that's not what sells. What sells is you tell somebody, oh, go buy this, go buy that, or look into this. You can't say buy it, right? But you could say, go look into this one, or this is my opinion on XYZ company. And a lot of these guys, they don't realize that it's a fool's errand to try and beat the market. Some of them need to learn the hard way. I learned the hard way. I'm trying to help people from not having to learn that way. So anyways, I linked my video. I said what I had to say. And he comes back. It looks like the YouTube channel host is reading these comments as well. So, he watched the video and he's saying, oh, Adobe, it boils down to a growth company, and then it's a company that people use for video editing. That's exactly what Adobe is. It's a growth company. People use it for video editing. They also have different segments. Like they have Adobe Sign, where you can sign documents. That's a direct competitor against DocuSign. They have different kinds of, advertising companies that they own as well. They did a few acquisitions in that landscape. Then he goes on to say, second, your main takeaway is that few companies actually beat the indexes. That is correct. There are only a handful of companies that beat the indexes, and those that do are in those indexes, right? They take up some weighting in those indexes. And then, namely QQQ. Thirdly, you rely on entirely on past performance, completely ignoring that investment returns are driven by future earnings and cash flows, not historical ones. I understand that. It's not based on the past, it's based on the present earnings. But it's also important to take a look and see how your investment performed in the last decade, 2 decades, people who owned it, right? There's people who own this company for a long time, they're holding on to it, or there's people who bought it in the last 5 years, they're down 70% on their money, versus just buying a quality growth index fund like QQQ, they would be up with less hassle, right? But I understand this guy has 1/5 of his portfolio in one company. He probably can't go to sleep at night. So, he goes back to saying that the market's in a bubble, yada, yada, yada. Directly inflates QQQ and S&P 500. Guys, look, this has been a major argument for like the last decade. There's always going to be new top companies. Nobody knows what they're going to be. There's always going to be rotations in the market. That's why their components are always changing. Nobody knows what the next major companies are going to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years. Nobody knows how these index funds are going to change over time. That's why you buy the index. because while it changes and grows, the different companies get included in it. So, clearly he didn't take away what I wanted him to from the video, which is, buy this growth index fund and just let it ride. So the YouTube channel host, Adrianomics, replied, I do not mind self-promotion, but comparing QQQ to Adobe makes no sense. I disagree. Adobe is considered a growth company, and the QQQ is a tech-oriented growth index fund. It makes perfect sense to match growth against growth. He says, I would be ready to bet that the next 3 years Adobe will destroy the S&P 500. See, it's easy to say the next 3 years it'll destroy the S&P 500 because you're comparing an apple to the apple tree, the S&P 500. We're not comparing apples to apples. Adobe to QQQ is apples to apples. Adobe versus S&P 500 is apple to apple tree comparison. So I replied. I said, hey, we'll come back here in 3 years and see who wins. Adobe versus QQQ and S&P 500 in 3 years. In my opinion, the more fair apples to apples is QQQ, since it leads towards growth. S&P 500 is apple versus apple tree. The whole point I'm trying to make is indexing in QQQ and SPY over a long period of time will beat stock picking. More than happy to come back here after 3 to 5 years and see who wins. I did enjoy the video, and I do think you mean well. Because, guys, at the end of the day, nobody knows what anyone's intentions are, right? All of these guys that make investing YouTube videos, I've been in the market for over 10 years now, and I've come across a lot of these players that, they make their videos. Some are still here, some are not. Some of them probably realized that at the end of the day, indexing is the way and deleted their channels. And, some of them didn't, and they still make videos. Now, in my opinion, will there come a time that most of these investing YouTubers have to have a come to Jesus moment that the indexing is better? Yes. Because in investing, when you're buying individual companies, you can have a good winning streak, but it only takes a few bad picks and your performance drops. Now, all of a sudden, you're not matching the market, you're underperforming the market, and you're spending time, energy, and effort while underperforming it. The reason people buy individual companies is to outperform the indexes. If you're not outperforming it, then what's the point in buying it, right? I think Adobe in the next 10 years is not going to outperform the QQQ. I think that QQQ in 10 years from now will probably be $2,000 a share. And if you're lucky, Adobe will still be here. That's my personal opinion. Again, if you guys want to check out this guy's video, I have it posted down below. I'm not saying my way is the right way and his way is the wrong way. I'm just saying I think index funds are the best way to invest for a majority of people for the long term. And I can only hope that a lot of these YouTubers are still here in the future, and they have that realization that, hey, it's better to buy these index funds. Anyways, guys, that's today's video. If you guys have comments, leave them down below. Thanks for watching.